welcome to Justice, live tonight from our nation's capital. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us. My opening statement. Paul Ryan needs to step down as Speaker of the House. The reason? He failed to deliver the votes on his health care bill, the one trumpeted to repeal and replace Obamacare, the one that he had 7 years to work on, the one he hid under lock and key in the basement of Congress, the one that had to be pulled to prevent the embarrassment of not having enough votes to pass. But this bill didn't just fail. It failed when Republicans had the House, the Senate, the White House. And the timing? It failed within the first 70 days of President Donald Trump's administration. A president who made replacement of Obamacare the hallmark of his campaign, and then used valuable political capital to accomplish it. You know, Americans elected the one man they believed could do it, a complete outsider, someone beholding to no one but them. And Speaker Ryan, you come in with all your swagger and experience, and you sell him a bill of goods, which ends up a complete and total failure. And you allow our president, in his first 100 days, to come out of the box like that? Based on what? Your legislative expertise, your knowledge of the arcane ins and outs of the bill writing process, your relationships, what, your drinks at the Hay Adams with your pals? Folks, I want to be clear. This is not on President Trump. No one expected a businessman to completely understand the nuances, the complicated ins and outs of Washington and its legislative process. How would he know which individuals upon whom he would be able to rely? Many of them friends and establishment colleagues of Speaker Ryan. You, on the other hand, Speaker Ryan, know very well who are the 15 hardliners, the 10 moderates, and all the other ones. You, of course, know their demands. And if you didn't, why didn't you? Some of them actually shut down the government over Obamacare, and you couldn't figure out what you needed to do to get their support? You knew no Democrat was going to support it, and that you would have to rely on Republicans. How could you possibly misjudge this? And where was the whip Scalise in all of this? How tough a lift was this? And why start with this if you're not sure you've got the votes? Now, I certainly have not spoken with the president about any of this, but I can only imagine that he and his aides took on health care because they believed you had his back, and you didn't. You didn't even test the waters. You had no consensus, and I hate it when Schumer and Pelosi get to beat their drums and talk about what a great day it is for America that President Trump failed, when even they know that Obamacare is a total disaster. The president, on the other hand, is handling this with dignity. And he doesn't seem to want to criticize you, saying this.
I want to thank Paul Ryan. He worked very, very hard. I will tell you that.
Mr. President, all reports are that you wanted to handle the tax cuts first, but that Ryan convinced you to go with health care. If that's the case, not only has he hurt you with his health care debacle, but the ripples that will hurt you as you try to overhaul the tax code will come back at you. The Freedom Caucus, feeling emboldened by their win with this healthcare failure, will now dig their heels in on the tax cuts. Ryan has hurt you going forward, and he's got to go. The shame of this is that in addition to putting your faith in someone who did not have your back, You made the decision, as opposed to letting Obamacare explode, as it inevitably will, you decided to take it on anyway.
Waited 2 years, it's going to explode like you've never seen an explosion. Nobody's going to be able to afford it. It's a disaster. And that's politically what we should do, but we don't want to do that. We want to get something done and get it done right.
I never put my faith in you, Ryan. I questioned you all through the campaign. When you distanced yourself from candidate Trump whenever you felt the prevailing winds blowing against Trump. To me, your loyalty was always in question. Yet what was never in question to me was your intelligence, your savvy, and your comprehension of the system. So why? Why would you let this happen? What was your agenda? The reason, Ryan, you and all your Washington colleagues are held in such low esteem with the American people is because you've forgotten about us. In spite of the fact that you rhinos were all working against him, though, the president joined with you. And he relied on you, trusting you, believing you had his back, and you didn't. The American people won't forget this, and neither should the president. And that's my open. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter, hashtag Judge Jeanine. And later, I'll find out what at least some of you think about this topic. It's tonight's topic in Street Justice. But first, joining me now with reaction is my all-star political panel. We move them up tonight for this special occasion. GOPAC Chairman David Avella is here in Washington with me, and back in New York, former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer and radio talk show host Chris Hahn. Now, guys, I want to make it perfectly clear to both of you that when the president said, when he tweeted, watch Judge Jeanine tonight, he and I had absolutely no conversation, no discussion, no email, nothing. He had no idea that I was going to do this open. In fact, I didn't know about it until I woke up this morning and I thought about doing it, and I'm still furious with Paul Ryan. So I want to make that perfectly clear to everyone. But am I wrong, David, about this? Why did they let President Trump do this?
The Speaker certainly is going to take his share of criticism over this defeat, as he needs to, because he is the Speaker. With that said, as Ben Franklin counseled, we will either hang together or we will certainly hang separately. Right. And the best things Republicans can do right now is have President Trump and Senate Republicans get Neil Gorsuch confirmed to the Supreme Court. And that will give Democrats their third defeat on the Supreme Court.
You're pivoting on me.
No, I'm not pivoting.
No. I want to go back. What you said was hang together. They're not hanging together. And what this requires is that President Trump, at this point, with his finesse and the art of the deal, recognizing that it ain't a Republican Party that's going to hang together. They all hate Obamacare. They've had 7 years. They couldn't figure it out. It's time for him to create his own deal and his own party.
And I don't know about another party, but let's say this. Secretary Price has already told governors and state legislatures they should start applying for waivers. That needs to happen. There are things that can happen through the administration that can be done to help improve health care. Ultimately, some of this is going to have to be done through legislation, and the president has talked about that we'll look down the road to try to do more stuff legislatively. But lots can be done. Look, Tom Price is the man of the hour right now.
All right, Chris, go.
I hope the president's watching. I have a little bit of advice for him. There are 535 men and women in the House and Senate, and negotiating with only half of them makes your margin of error very small.
Well, maybe you ought to take a lead from Obama, who didn't negotiate with Republicans at all and got his Obamacare passed. Don't even go there, Chris.
Well, you know what, Jeanine? If that's what he wants, if he wants to just emulate Obama, then he can emulate Obama. But if he really wants to be the art of the deal and the king deal maker in this country, he needs to negotiate with everyone. And clearly the Republican Party in the House and the House has not helped him here in this process. So the president has to.
All right, let me ask you this, Chris.
And he can make a deal with anybody else he wants.
Okay, good. Thanks. Chris, should Ryan have known what to do? Should Ryan have said, Mr. President, we can't go with this. I don't have the numbers. Should Ryan have hid that bill and not let anyone see it? Rand Paul was right.
Yeah. I think that this bill was a bad bill. Speaker Ryan should have known it was a bad bill and it wasn't going to be passed. But the fact that they tried to get it through so quickly is probably what ultimately killed the bill. They never built support among the various interest groups around the country and made some changes to appease those groups. Instead, everybody was against this bill. Liberal groups, conservative groups, moderate groups, doctors, lawyers, everybody.
Okay, we're having some technical difficulties. David can't hear you, Chris. So, Chris is talking about getting all the support that he needed ahead of time before he actually brought out this bill. Is that what you were saying, Chris?
Yeah, I was saying that. And you got to build that support organically.
Got to build the support. They did it too quickly.
Well, had it passed, Chris would still be saying they did things too quickly. Look, hearing criticism from Democrats, look, this is their heyday. But as I was getting ready to say, when they have their third defeat on the Supreme Court, one, they didn't get Merrick Garland. Two, they didn't get Hillary Clinton elected, so she couldn't put her person on the Supreme Court. And Neil Gorsuch, it will be on the Supreme Court, even if that requires a changing of the rules so that Chuck Schumer can't filibuster
this failure is going to make it harder for Neil Gorsuch for sure.
Oh, come on.
Oh, come on. That's ridiculous.
Give me a break. What's the New York term for, that's bull crap?
You know what?
Neil
Gorsuch, let me tell you, this guy has a perfect temperament, intellect, experience. The guy is I love watching him. Can I tell you something? This man is so brilliant. He makes me proud to be a judge. This man is phenomenal. Gorsuch is phenomenal. Don't be political on me, Chris. Don't do it.
Look, but here's the thing, Judge. The question is, does the president have the political capital in Congress right now to get this judge through? I don't know after yesterday.
Yeah, you know why? Because Ryan blew it, and that's why people are going to question it now. Ryan brought this on the president. No one else did. Last word.
Well, the president needs to. The president. The other piece of advice.
David. Last word.
Judge, we have a lot of work to get health care going forward. It's going to have to happen at the state level right now.
No, it's going to implode and we'll start all over again.
We got 68 of 99 state legislatures, 33 Republican governors. Look at what states are going to do.
Okay, good. All right, David, Chris, talk to you next week, I'm sure.
Talk to you next time.
Okay. And Deputy Assistant to the President, Sebastian Gorka, is still on deck here tonight in Washington. But next, the House Intel chair out this week with new details on Trump wiretapping allegations. A former Department of Justice national security lawyer is here with me live to break down what all this means to the investigation and the president. House Intelligence Committee Chair Devin Nunes, he stirred up a hornet's nest this week when he announced he got his eyes on intelligence that indicated President Trump and his team were swept up in some sort of incidental surveillance activity after the November election. It was an explosive allegation that could lend credence to President Trump's tweets earlier this month, alleging he was spied on by President Obama. Here to talk about all of this with me is Carrie Cordero, former counsel to the U.S. Assistant Attorney General for National Security. All right, Carrie, let me see if I've got this right. First of all, we've got the president who took enormous criticism for suggesting that President Obama had wiretapped him. And I think that you and I can both agree that that may not have been the terminology that should have been used. It was too specific. You and I both lawyers, the president not. Can we agree on that?
Well, the president tweeted one thing, and then this week, Director Comey testified that what he had tweeted, there's no support.
The question that I'm asking you is, as someone who's not a lawyer, is not as specific as you and I might be, since I have done wiretaps and you have engaged in them as well. And when you've got clappers saying that the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, that there is absolutely no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, that you've got people within the administration pushing back and saying there's nothing there. And then you've got Adam Schiff out there saying, oh, my God, Team Trump is in cahoots with the Russians. So we've got people within the administration who seem to have an agenda that is different from someone who is familiar with all of the intelligence. So what is going on here?
Well, there's a few things going on. First of all, there's 3 separate investigations going on right now.
Yeah.
Director Comey confirmed that there's an FBI investigation investigation looking into Russian influence on the election, including whether that included any members of the president-elect's team. There is an investigation being conducted by the Senate Intelligence Committee that is ongoing and is being done in a bipartisan way. And then there has been an investigation being conducted by the House Intelligence Committee, although after Chairman Nunes's public pronouncements this week, the status of that investigation is in real question.
All right, let's talk about the fact that, we've got now an awareness that there is the Trump transition team at Trump Tower that information was sucked up pursuant to, and I'm not going to get in the weeds here, and as a result of that intelligence or the information that was sucked up, people in Trump Tower, that apparently it had no intelligence value, none of it was related to Russia, and names were unmasked. The facts that names were unmasked in itself is a crime.
Okay, when you say information sucked up, what that means to the intelligence community is incidental collection.
Right.
So since the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act has been in place since 1978, there has been something called incidental collection, which is the collection of individuals who are not the actual targets of the foreign intelligence surveillance.
Right.
That is allowed, that is lawful, and there are procedures by which it's supposed to be handled.
I know. As a DA, I did wiretapping. There are procedures called minimization. We did it all the time. There's information that shouldn't be there, that shouldn't be given to a court or shouldn't be played for a jury. I get all that. It's similar. It's a different level. I understand that. But when it has no intelligence value, it's not related to Russia, it's gotten at Trump Tower, it's after the campaign, and the names of the individuals who are not being investigated are unmasked, and then just coincidentally, President Obama, who we know hates Trump, decides that he's going to disseminate information among 16 other intelligence agencies, and then the names of those individuals are leaked to the press. I think these people should be indicted. That's a felony.
Okay, but Chairman Nunes made a public pronouncement this week alleging that there is something wrong that was done with the incidental collection and that the information wasn't handled according to procedures.
Right.
But that's not how congressional intelligence oversight is normally done.
I don't care about him. I care about felonies. I care about crimes. I don't care about Nunes. And you know what? As far as I'm concerned, these intelligence committees, some of these other committees, they're political. Adam Schiff's running out and saying Team Trump's in cahoots with Russia, when the bottom line is that we got Clapper, NSA, FBI, CIA saying no cahoots whatsoever. So at this point, they all invalidate and neuter each other out.
But that point exactly. So, and in relation to Chairman Nunes's public statements this week, is why now there is even more calls for an outside independent either select committee in Congress or an independent commission.
Do you know how long
to
it took
into
to get a select committee on Benghazi when 4 people were dead? And now when we know this information, this incidental collection is after the election with people whose names are being unmasked and disseminated all of a sudden by the Obama administration like 2 weeks before he leaves? Come on, this is politics at its worst. But I loved having you here in Washington, Carrie, because I finally got to meet you. Carrie Cordero, thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks.
All right. And Ambassador John Bolton will be with me live in just a few moments. But first, talking terror with one of President Trump's biggest experts on the subject, Deputy Assistant to the President, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, is here live in just a moment. Welcome back to Justice. This week's deadly attack in London by an ISIS-inspired terrorist has put terror back in the front of everyone's mind, especially here in America. Joining me now to talk about that and more, Deputy Assistant to President Trump, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. All right, Doctor, not only did this bring ISIS and the terrorist problem back on everyone's mind, but it seemed that coinciding with that this week, that there is a new regulation, and I remember just looking at the news and saying, oh my goodness, and we've got all of these new measures that seem to be created this week, the White House, apparently TSA, where they're changing the rules about what laptops and what can be brought on airplanes. What's going on and why?
Right. So, Judge, it's not specific intelligence, but the president, because his primary responsibility is to the safety of Americans, has said that we have certain information regarding certain airports in the Middle East plus also Turkey and the Gulf, where you are no longer allowed to take larger electronics onto the cabin with you. They have to be checked. We're not going to go into the details of what exactly we know and potential plots, but the fact is that there is always the catch-up game. So good counterterrorism is not reactive, it's preventative. Look at the last 16 years from 9/11. First, it's box cutters and mace. Then it goes to what? It goes to shoes, right? A month later, then it goes to the liquid bomb plot in 06. Remember the printer cartridge? It's always, can we out-imagine the terrorists? And now we're closing the gate before the attack.
I love that. I love the fact that we are being almost preemptive, as opposed to figuring out or getting hit with something like it's a shoe bomber or this one or that one. But the intelligence that we get, you know, Americans, I don't think really comprehend what we do in the Middle East, what, you know, CIA and what some of our covert operators are doing over there to find this stuff out, and how much danger they're in every day to get the information that they're getting. But, you know, I remember hearing on one of the reports that in some of the battery areas and some of the laptops that they can put certain things in there that can
exactly.
explode.
No, you nailed it. So it's to do with those larger batteries, lithium batteries. So clearly you've been following these issues, but you're absolutely right. So the issue here is all of these things are connected, whether it's the technology, whether it's the larger electronics, whether it's the executive order on the temporary moratorium on immigration. The president's very clear about this. We're not going to wait until the attack occurs. It's too late. We want to stop it before it occurs.
But that is for people coming from that part of the world.
Right.
It's not for us. It's not for people leaving from JFK and O'Hare, LAX. It's people coming here.
People coming here on flights that are originating there and coming to the United States.
But you know what doesn't make sense? I'll tell you what. Not that I know, but if I'm at LAX and I'm flying to JFK, what difference does it make? I can put one of those laptops and use that and create havoc over here.
But look at, for example, why we did that executive order on immigration from specific countries, from those 7 countries originally, then the 6, because we're looking at the threat now and what we expect in the future. The president was clear. We're going to obliterate ISIS. You remember the words he used?
I totally believe that.
So we're going to wipe them off the face of the earth. But of course, before we get all of them, what's going to happen? Some of them, like the cockroaches, when you switch the light on, they're going to scurry. We want to stop them coming here. So it's not the person flying from LA to New York that's the threat. It's that ISIS recruit who's traveling out of Mosul, out of the Middle East, out of Syria, gets into Turkey.
But then, Doctor, let's talk about the kid or the guy in London.
Yes.
Okay. He was born in London.
He was a convert, yes.
And he was a convert.
Correct.
So he can decide, you know, I'm going to kill all these people today. The same can happen in the United States. They can decide I'm going to use a laptop, it's a good idea, and go to New York.
That's why the measures that, for example, the NYPD developed in the last 16 years are so incredibly important. In America, the primary source of this kind of intelligence is human intelligence. We need the sources, the covert sources. You know better than anybody else, right?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. NYPD, we love you. And Dr. Gorka, good to see you again.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. And we're going to continue this conversation in a moment with former U.S. Ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. Welcome back to Justice. With me is the former United States Ambassador to the UN, John Bolton. Ambassador, thanks for being here. Okay, when Dr. Gorka was here, he talked about the fact that, they're starting to move out, that we're squeezing ISIS, and I think a week ago there were more than 10,000 Americans over there. Syria, Iraq, Mosul in Iraq, Raqqa in Syria, and we're going to defeat them. I truly believe it. Donald Trump is right. He's true to his word. We're gonna squash them.
Well, I think what's happening now is that the Trump review of military options, the pace has begun to pick up. You can see some changes in strategy already, because what the president said during the campaign was we needed to destroy ISIS not ultimately, as Barack Obama said, but as soon as possible. And the reason for that is if we can destroy their base of operations in Syria and Iraq, we can prevent or at least substantially impede their recruiting and deploying terrorists into Western Europe and the United States. But I think clearly every day that goes by just gives them more time to do that. And I think what they're going to do is try and get out of Raqqa, get out of Mosul.
And where are they headed?
And go to some other anarchic place in the region, like Libya, like Yemen, possibly. But they're also going to step up their attacks in Western Europe and the United States to show that the Islamic world that even though they're being defeated by conventional military means in Iraq and Syria, they can still cause death and destruction in the West. And I think it's at least possible that this attack in London last week was the first of this kind of demonstration. I mean, the symbolism of a terrorist attack, literally in the shadow of Big Ben, just can't be underestimated. And it leads you to wonder whether the next one is going to be somewhere in the United States, maybe even here in Washington.
All right. So you believe that ultimately, and we've all believed that ultimately that they're going to end up over here. But the starburst that Dr. Gorka was talking about just as you were coming in, where, their ultimate game is to be over here, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming from over there to here, but that they're going to get the lone wolves to react over here.
Well, I think it's important to have in mind that in the case in London, although all the reporting talked about being one person driving the SUV, one person with the knife, the British authorities have already arrested 8 other people for questioning. So it may well be we're going to learn there was a support network. It may be one person who's the actor who causes the death and tragedy, but he's supported by, planned out, and assisted by others. And I think that's where the idea of recruitment in the United States of people born here, not necessarily who converted, but having had the advantage of living in a free society, still turning to radical terrorism, shows what a pervasive ideological threat it is we're facing. Not a threat from economic deprivation, as President Obama used to say, but adopting this radical ideology.
Right. And what do you see, Ambassador, if any connection there might be between sanctuary cities and the radicalization of these extremists?
Well, I think any environment that gives them more latitude, more flexibility to plan and to seek refuge, to bring more people in, is a real danger. I mean, I think the immigration issue should focus more on the national security threat to people coming across the border, and not just the Mexican border, coming into our airports. I think it's not a matter to keep America safe of just a couple of incremental steps to watch immigration and people coming in. I think we've had 8 years under Obama of trying to ignore the existence of the threat, denying its reality, and that's going to come home to roost if we're not careful.
All right. Well, Ambassador, thank you so much for being here.
Welcome to Washington.
Oh, I love it here. Anyway, new details on that shocking case in Maryland, the one involving a 14-year-old girl and 2 illegal immigrants. How do you know if your child or grandchild is safe in school? How do you know who is sitting next to your child in school? This is important. We're talking safety in schools next. The shocking case of a 14-year-old girl allegedly raped by 2 illegal immigrants in a Maryland school got me thinking. Do you know who's in school with your children? If you think that your school administrator, principal, has your back, think again. Joining me now is Chester County, Pennsylvania Sheriff Bunny Welsh, and from the town of Lynn, Massachusetts, the Mayor Judith Flanagan Kennedy. All right, I'm going to start with the sheriff. We don't have a lot of time, and I'm going to bring you both back because I love this issue. All right, Sheriff, Montgomery County, where this 14-year-old was allegedly raped. I choose to believe she was raped, and we can, say they're allegedly the criminals. They choose their sanctuary county. That means they won't honor a federal detainer from ICE. That means that they're not going to tell ICE where these guys are, and they're going to let them roam freely, correct?
Correct. And this is a tragedy on many levels because the greatest job of the government is to protect the citizens. And the citizens here, whether it's the protection at the border or in your communities or our most vulnerable citizens, our children in school, the system failed every step of the way in this case.
Okay, so for those people who say, wait a minute, the cops have to tell them where these criminals are. They're illegals, they're committing crimes, they've been deported, they're convicted. You as a sheriff can tell my viewers that if their boss says they can't, they can be investigated and brought up on charges, correct? Even if they're a cop.
That's correct.
Okay, good.
That's
now
correct.
To the mayor. Mayor, you are the mayor of Lynn, Massachusetts, and you pretty much oversee the 5th largest school district in the state of Massachusetts. Now, you have one of the biggest immigrant communities in Massachusetts. What, if any, impact does the immigrant community have on the schools of Massachusetts?
It's been a tremendous strain on the city's budget to accommodate all of the new people that we've had in the system.
Okay, what kind of strain and to whom?
Well, for example, we're operating 5 schools that are more than 100 years old, and we are projected to add approximately 500 more newcomer students who are not speaking primarily English in the coming year.
Okay, so if they're, first of all, who's building the new schools? Who's paying for it?
We tried. We had a debt exclusion vote on last week, and the measure failed 2-1. So we have to squeeze kids into the existing schools now.
Okay, good. So the impact on the students in terms of the strain is there are more kids per classroom, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and if someone's not speaking English, that requires more time the teacher has to spend, if you don't have more teachers, on the kids who aren't speaking as fluent as the American kids, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so somebody comes in who's an immigrant. How do you know what class to put them in if they don't speak English?
They do an initial evaluation, and many of these children who are coming in stop their formal education at 3rd grade, but they are growing well into adulthood, and we can't put them in a 3rd grade classroom. We had one man with graying temples. I couldn't see putting that person in a 3rd grade class, so they go in as freshmen in high school.
Whoa! Someone with graying temples in 3rd grade? So, but you put them in a...
We can't. We can't. And we have to educate them within the regular school day.
Okay, I got 1 minute hard, my producer's telling me. Now, did you have night school for these students, and was there a problem when you did for these adult students?
Yes, we did have a night school, and we were told by a children's advocacy group that we were not giving equal education to these students, so we had to shut down the night school and put everybody into the regular daytime classes.
Adults are in with our kids from other countries who don't speak English. Do you know if they have criminal records? Do you know if they've been vaccinated? Do you know who these people are?
No, they don't come in with any records of any sort, not even a birth certificate. So we have to accept their word for their age when they enter school.
Are the parents allowed to know who they are?
The other parents, I suppose, if they entered the school and looked around, they would see some people that looked like they were a little older than high school age.
And they go into the same bathrooms as our kids?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, they do.
All right,
they
I
are
have 10
high school students.
Sheriff Bunny Welch and Judith Kennedy, Mayor, thank you. I'm sorry. We're doing this next week. You're both coming back. This is infuriating. Remember, watch my new show, You, the Jury, that premieres on your local Fox affiliate April 7th at 9 p.m., where you, the jury, actually vote and render the verdict. Thanks so much for watching. Greg Gutfeld is next. See you tomorrow night for a special justice. Good night, Mr. Calabash, wherever you are.